Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk about solar arcs. There's a squirrel very close to me. Okay, so today we're going to talk about solar arcs. Solar arcs are a type of progression. And I wanted to talk about this because in the past I've used the term progressions, but I was actually talking about secondary progressions, and I should have been more clear about that. When I think of progressions in my mind, though, because secondary progressions are what I usually work with, up until recently, I would just use the term progression to talk about secondary progressions, and I probably shouldn't have done that, because there are solar arcs too, which is another sort of progression. The difference is solar arcs, secondary progressions, we'll start there. Secondary progressions are like a day for a year, and they'll progress the chart forward. But the outer planets rarely move. Like, you could have somebody who's 40 years old, and the outer planets probably won't have moved very much from where they were when the person was born. Now, in solar arcs, each planet will move a degree for however old the person is. Like, if the person is 40 years old, right? Solar arc Pluto will be like 40 degrees from where it was when they were born. So you see the outer planets moving in solar arcs, which is, well, it makes sense for me. It's just another layer of progressions to look at, to see what's up, to see what's going on. And they're really pretty cool. I've been messing with them a lot more recently for myself, personally. I've thrown it into some client work, and I've also looked at it for friends and family members, and it feels very, very, very apt. So I wanted to talk about it. I've also started looking at it for like Pluto's return here in the US, and all kinds of other shit, and it feels very apt there too. So I wanted to talk about it just a little bit, and kind of like explain kind of how you can work with them if you want to. I definitely recommend pulling your solar arcs, pulling the chart. There should be like on astro.com, if you go down to like, choosing what sort of chart you're wanting to create, it's like natal to solar arc, and it's near something called solar arc directions. I think it's above that one. That's the one that you choose. I'll put it in the description exactly which one what the actual name is, but that's what you choose. And what you'll end up with is something that looks kind of like this, or really not kind of like this. It'll look like this. It just won't be my chart. I'm going to show you my chart just because I can show you my chart without violating any privacy. This is what it'll look like. It'll look like a progress chart, like a secondary progress chart. But it'll be the solar arcs. So this is kind of what it will look like. And when you're looking at these, because everything does move slower than, say, with transits, depending on what you read, a lot of people feel like you should only really look at aspects that are within 1 degree of a natal planet, like 1 degree applying or 1 degree separating. So like, let's say you had your natal moon. Let's say your natal moon at 2 degrees Capricorn. And let's say you had, like, I don't know, solar arc sun at 1 degree Capricorn. That would be a good conjunction, say, within that degree, 1 degree applying, 1 degree separating. I would extend that personally. I would extend it out to no more than 2, but I would look at 2 degrees applying and separating. I would. Some people might be like, fuck no, that's too wide. And that's fine. If you'd rather stick with like a degree or a degree and a half or whatever you want to do is fine. But I would extend it out to 2. I would. I also would focus, and this again is just me, I would focus the most on conjunctions here. Also, just my opinion, I think conjunctions are the most important aspect, generally. In a natal chart, in a transit chart, in a synastry chart, in a solar arc chart, in a in a secondary progression chart. I do think conjunctions are the most important. I think they're the most powerful. So they are definitely what I pay attention to most and have been paying attention to most in solar arcs. Now, I don't see any reason why I would focus on the harder aspects personally. I think that's probably the way to go. I think that's from what I understand, that's also what most people do. If you want to start looking at the trines and the sextiles, more power to you. Especially if you've got some really hard, difficult looking solar arcs coming up, or somebody does, and you want to try to lessen the blow a little bit. Yeah, I would look for the trines and the sextiles too, from solar arc planets to natal planets. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I would focus on, if it were me, I would focus on the conjunctions and then on the squares and the oppositions. And yeah, use that 2 degrees applying and separating if you're wanting to do it like I do it. So when you're looking at, let me show you mine again. When you're looking at solar arcs, you want to, like, okay, for instance, I've got solar arc Pluto's fucking my ascendant, my natal ascendant right now. And I have, like, the solar arc sun fucking my natal Neptune. And both of these are going on right now. So the solar arc sun to natal Neptune is fine. That one. The solar arc Pluto fucking my natal ascendant makes a lot of sense for things that have been going on in my life past. Well, right now it's almost exactly, it's close to being exactly conjunct. But it makes sense for things that have been going on in my life over the past, year and a half. It does make sense for that to be there. And they'll kind of, there might be a feeling like transits, like, okay, like with transits. Like I had transit Pluto fucking my ascendant for most of my adolescence. And it was not fun. It was not fun. So this is kind of, I expect this kind of will be a similar thing. Similar. A little different, obviously, because there's other shit going on. But a similar theme anyway. And I mention that because you might notice when you pull your own solar arcs, you might notice something similar, like, oh, I've got solar arc Pluto conjunct to my sun right now, and I had transit Pluto conjunct my sun at some other point, in my life, and there probably will be a similar theme. My guess would be you might feel some I don't know, maybe like callbacks to certain things if you've already experienced like the transit of something, and then you experience a solar arc, or even vice versa. There might be certain callbacks to things. I could totally see that coming to pass. It certainly has in my life anyway. So I would definitely think about that. Definitely keep that in mind. Now, the solar arc angles, like the solar arc ascendant, the solar arc midheaven, the solar arc IC, the solar arc descendant, they can kind of, they tend to show actual events. They don't have to, but that does tend to be the way that they go. Like, they actually show events. Like let's say you had the solar arc midheaven conjunct a natal planet. That might show some sort of change in your career, or in the highest and most idealized version of yourself, or in your public presence, public standing, things like that, reputation. In regards to that planet that it's conjunct, or the planet, if you want to look at squares and oppositions, the planet that it's squaring, planet that it's opposing, things like that. Like the descendant, solar arc descendant might show a change in relationships, in close relationships, or even a change in the way that you relate to your shadow. And this would all depend on what planet it is conjunct or squaring or opposing. So those tend to show events. Now the solar arc planets, they will they will kind of, like with the conjunction, say, they will kind of shine through that planet that they're conjunct or whatever in the manner that they, in whatever it is that they need to express, right? Like the sun, for instance. Sun, or we can even be talking about squares and oppositions here, but like the sun, like the solar arc sun touching something, I'll show the card. Solar arc sun, that planet that it's conjunct or square or opposing, it's gonna like light up, right? It's gonna illuminate, and anything going on with that natal planet is gonna be lit up. That's something to definitely keep in mind. Solar arc moon, conjunct something, square opposing. There might be like an emotional undercurrent or an emotional feeling to that planet. It might become more emotionally important. It might be charged with emotion more than it usually is. Solar arc Mercury, you might be looking at that planet being like mentally stimulated, depending on what planet we're talking about and what aspect the solar arc Mercury is making. That might be an easy thing or a challenging thing, or it might just kind of blend. Depends. Solar arc Venus, you might be looking at like the values of that planet changing, needing to love on that planet more, or something of that nature. You might feel more called to do that. I could see that being the case. Or that planet just might have a more loving feeling to it than it usually does, depending on what the planet is. Solar arc Mars might kind of kick that planet's ass in gear. Say it like that. Depending on, what all is going on in the chart, it might kind of be like it might kind of poke it, like, wake up, fucking do something. Or, whatever is going on with the whole chart. But yeah, I could totally see solar arc Mars acting that way. Or even kind of giving an aggressive bent to that planet, or more driven bent. Solar arc Jupiter, that'll probably try to expand on the planet, on the whatever, the solar arc Jupiter will kind of expand on whatever planet, whatever natal planet it's touching. Maybe amplify that planet. Solar arc Saturn might, some people would like to say that it could restrict, it could limit the planet that it's touching, but it could also mature it. I like to go with that better, because a lot of times boundaries and restrictions are actually maturing agents, and we don't think of them that way. But they're necessary for whatever reason. Sometimes they are just annoying. Sometimes they are just limits, it's just limiting or restricting. But sometimes there is a maturing feeling to it. Solar arc Uranus, that's like massive change. Like a massive catalyst for change with that planet. Could see there being some chaos with that planet even. Especially depending on how that person relates that planet as it is. Maybe that planet gets a little weird. Seems possible too. Solar arc Neptune, you might be looking at that planet becoming more sensitive. That, whatever natal planet it's touching, the planet might get more sensitive. That planet might get a little bit more spiritual. That planet might also have to work through some illusion shit. I could see that happening with Neptune involved. Or confusion even. And solar arc Pluto, you'd be looking at, death and rebirth and transformation and metamorphosis and all these sorts of things, burning something to the ground and then it building back up. So that is what Pluto does. It does burn shit to the ground or whatever sort of analogy you want to use there for that, but it does rebuild. So generally speaking anyway. So yeah, definitely take a look and see what's going on in your own. Definitely pull your solar arcs and see what's going on, see what you got going on. Another thing to keep in mind, just like with transits, if you're looking at an aspect with you know, like let's say you've got like the, I don't know, solar arc Saturn conjunct your natal sun. You want to look at the natal sun to solar arc Saturn conjunction, but you also want to look at the house cusp that that Leo is on in the chart, because that house will also be impacted by the solar arc as well. It will definitely be impacted too. So you definitely want to look at that as well. Definitely for sure. Anyway, let me know if you want to let me know. If you pull your solar arcs and you want to leave a comment like, wow, my solar arcs look like they're awesome right now, or wow, this looks fucked. Let me know. I'd love to hear. Anyway, I'm going to get going. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Paternal Astrology on Instagram. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.